Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Life as I See It with your hostess, Dina Nierenberg. And with me today, I have my favorite co-hostess of all time, Esther Nierenberg. How are you, honey?
Good.
How was your weekend?
Good.
Good, nice. Wow. Okay, a lot's been going on. And I've decided tonight is a very great night to talk about compassion and more specifically self-compassion. And, it's very interesting. Today I was sitting in my car and I was listening to news, which is like always a mistake. But today I realized something very interesting. I always thought that these reporters and weather forecasters and journalists, that they always were able to just speak without any notes. And I'm sitting in the car, and next thing I know, the reporter goes down, "Oh, the script is down. I won't be able to talk to you for another minute. Let's see. The script is back up, the copy's back up. Now I can start to tell you what's going on with the weather." And that made me realize that I can be extremely tough on myself. I'll come to a speech that I have to make, and I'll say, if you really know your stuff, you wouldn't need any notes. Sometimes I'll come to a show, and I'll say, you know what, if you really know your stuff, you wouldn't need any notes. I go to work sometimes, and I say, no notes for you today. You got to speak totally out of the memory, and that's all. And today I said to myself, I can take this self-compassion that I'm working on so hard to another level. It didn't really occur to me that I had been very tough on myself as far as professionally speaking. I try to give myself so much kindness. I'm all into EFT and yoga and reflexology and self-care and trying to eat healthy and trying to get some sleep. But professionally, I've always been very tough on myself. Until today. Today is where it ends. Because I'm listening to the radio, and next thing I know, the reporter says, I can't keep talking right now because the copy's down. Like, wow, if this one can give herself an easier time, professionally speaking, so can I. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, and not only that, but it's also, not only should you have notes, but it's better if you do, because, I'm not even talking about the physical notes. I'm talking about the emotional and spiritual notes. It's always good to have compassion for yourself and to have tools that you can rely on, so that way life goes a lot smoother for you and you're able to have more compassion for yourself. And it's a lot to expect of yourself to not have any emotional or spiritual notes.
Interesting. Yeah, it's as a professor and as a speaker, when I think of notes, all I think is pieces of paper and the notes that you have scribbled on, and you're trying to make sentences come together and trying to make paragraphs come together, and then you're trying to make the whole thing come together and make sense. It didn't occur to me the spiritual and emotional notes that you're talking about. Do you think that it's important to recite to oneself daily affirmations, or to perhaps see it on the fridge, on the walls, on the doors, when you first wake up in the morning?
I think it's very important, and not only is it very important, but it's something that more people should do, because they overlook it and they don't recognize that saying affirmations or seeing things like straight out on a paper or on your fridge or whatever locks it into your subconscious mind more than if you were to just think about it and not write it down or affirm it in your daily affirmations.
Yeah, it helps to see it in print, that's for sure. And that's actually why I love looking at your WhatsApp app updates. You just write the greatest affirmations, the greatest things, and they ring so true. Somehow, when it's coming from another voice and you're seeing somebody else writing it, it just, not only does it ring true, but it hits home and it really, really goes in. And that's the deal with compassion. You have compassion on other people, and then it's up to the people who read your updates to have self-compassion. Well, I'm reading this. Do I take it in or not? And you're more likely to take it in when you see it. I actually started my radio show, Your Life at the Top, 8 years ago. And the sole reason, I had a lot of experience in radio and TV, but that was like on my cousin's show and other people's shows, and I had some fun with that. I had a lot of fun with that. But the main reason why I started Your Life at the Top 8 years ago, and yes, you can still listen to it on Mixcloud, is because I was giving myself a very hard time. And I said to myself, what if I'm on the radio and then I actually have to convince other people to give themselves an easy time? And what if when I'm playing back the radio, I'm actually having to hear my own voice on public radio? And I've got to at that point say, hey, you know what? You always admired people on TV. You always admired people on radio. And you always listened to what they were saying. So now it's time for you to listen to you. And I found that doing my own radio show really, really helped me to have tremendous, tremendous self-compassion for myself, to develop my compassionate side for me even more than I already had, because up until that point, I was just really, really a work in progress. But my self-compassion took a real high dive. It took a really, really elevated when I started to have my own show. When I started the show, I found that my self-compassion really, really, really rose to elevated heights. And the reason for that being is because I was suddenly having to really listen to my own voice, to my own self, and it really went in. Because not only did I give over the messages with a whole lot of expression, I used to look in the mirror when I used to do the radio show. I used to call it in, and then I would look in the mirror, and I would talk to myself as much as I was talking to anybody else in my audience. And that really, really helped me out a lot. Self-compassion is very different from what we call self-pity. A lot of people think, self-compassion is self-pity. But they're two totally different things. Self-pity is when you're feeling really, really bad for yourself, and you go and you hole up somewhere because you don't want to see anybody, you don't want to see anything, you don't want to do anything. All I can think about is poor me, and my terrible, horrible life, and the terrible things that I said, and that she said, and that he said, and that everybody said and did to me, and everything I did. Self-pity, self-pity, self-pity. Along with self-pity is its sister, self-criticism. Because once you start in with the pity party, there's always going to be criticism of others, and then you start in with a criticism of yourself as well. And it's just, you dig yourself into a deep, deep, deep hole of sadness and gloom with self-pity. So it's very interesting because it's a very, very, very fast downward spiral. You think one self-pitying thought, you know what, you may as well go back to bed and not come out till the next day. Because that's where it takes you. Self-pity takes you down a rabbit hole real fast to depression, to anxiety, to all the worst things in the world, and so much anger, and then self-hatred. Self-compassion is different. When you're showing yourself true self-compassion, you're being mindful. What does it mean to be mindful? We talk about that in a lot of shows. Being mindful is being in the present moment, no matter what happens. No matter what happened, no matter what the fight, no matter what the arguments, no matter what I said or what you said or what anybody said, I am still in the present moment, fully aware of the present moment, and giving myself true self-kindness in the present moment. Giving myself true self-kindness in the present moment. What different ways can we care for ourselves in the present moment? What different ways can we care for ourselves in the present moment?
Well, there's many different ways you can care for yourself in the present moment, but I feel like the most basic of them all is to just simply, whether or not you realize this is the greatest act of self-compassion, to really engage yourself in what you are doing in each individual moment. Be super present with what you're doing each moment, and just like do one thing at a time and just be super mindful with your daily activities.
That's beautiful. I actually call that a walking meditation.
It is, yeah.
It's so true, right? There are some people that go, let me focus on my breath, let me focus on my There's so many people out there like you and me that we do our best meditation when we're actually moving around. We're moving around and we're focusing on this, we're focusing on that, we're focusing on that. And basically what we do, what Esther and I do every day, is we get out of our own minds. That is the greatest act of self-compassion that we can give ourselves. And that's what works. That's what really works for us. You know, people whose minds are less jumpy can probably sit there, you know, in lotus position and go, all day. I can do that for max 5 minutes. And then I have to get up. I just have to get up. But we need to be mindful. So then we start to, you know, move around and get all into our workouts. And that's great. There's nothing for people like us overthinkers, than moving around a lot and not staying stuck in our minds. Now, how do we get out of our own heads with this mindfulness? Don't sit in the same place for too long. Honestly, that's it. Times when I've sat there too long with the phone, I wind up feeling extremely drained, because the phone is extremely draining. It physically drains your energy, on top of emotionally and spiritually as well. But it drains you. In order to get this walking meditation in, it's very, very important to never sit in the same place for too long, unless you're reading a book, because books take you places, right? Books take you through time and space and different continents, and that's why books are different. That's why you can actually sit for a book. Or if you're watching a limited amount of TV, for example, or a limited video, is that you can actually sit there for that video, TV, that program, then get up. Literally, you gotta get up. And you cannot sit in front of a television set all day long either. That's just depressing, and again, it's very, very draining on us physically. All of that blue light is extremely unhealthy, extremely dangerous, and it makes us tired and moody. And some people say hungry as well. You know?
Yeah, and it's funny because the other day someone asked me if I meditate daily, because we were having a conversation about spirituality and whatever, and she asked me if I meditate daily, and I was like, I do, but not in the way you're thinking of. I meditate daily in the way that I immerse myself full-mindedly and extremely presently in every activity I participate in. I meditate in the way that how I show up to my day and whatever.
That's right. You know, thank God if you woke up this morning, then you're alive. But some people are just more alive than others. There are people, and they wake up in the morning, and they have to literally just drag themselves around. They never really engage in the day fully. They do a sliver of what it is that they could be doing with that day. And then when you ask them why, if you were to ask them why, they say, because I can't do more than this. That's all. I'm not in the mood. Plus I'm exhausted. Plus I don't feel right. Plus I don't feel like I should be able to do more than I'm doing right now. And then there are people that they show up to like you were saying, they literally show up to their day. They wake up in the morning, and whether or not they want to get out of bed, they get out of bed. It's not a question, do I get out of bed or not? Like, say somebody who's living a sliver of their life. A person who's determined to live gets out of bed. No ifs, ands, or buts, no matter what they're thinking, no matter what they're feeling. And then they throw themselves into their day. No matter what they're thinking, feeling, they go for it. You know, short of being really physically exhausted and really needing to go back to sleep. And of course, you gotta have the time, and you also gotta be honest about whether or not you really need more sleep, or just your energy that's strained. But self-compassion helps you to always have that backup of extra energy to keep on moving. Self-compassion is you holding up your own back every minute of every day. It has to be an unconditional thing. Self-compassion happens no matter what, anything happened that day, no matter what you or anybody else said or did. Self-compassion has got to be an unconditional thing all the time. It never ends, and it goes on and on and on. And this is how we find ourselves with the extra energy needed to not only survive our own lives, but to thrive and flourish in our own lives.
I find it so interesting because when people you love are struggling with something, you're going to show them all the endless compassion in the world. But when you're going through a tough time yourself, nobody, and I mean nobody that I know, shows themselves the self-compassion that they show to their friends. And it's just really sad because you would never dare treat your friend the way you treat yourself, but you treat yourself so horribly. And it's just interesting to me how we don't treat ourselves the way we treat our friends.
It's true, right? And
yeah.
This is true of the ages. This is probably a question that has been asked for at least the past 2-3 generations. Like, why is it that we can be so kind to somebody else, and when it comes to us, we're horrid to ourselves? I mean, we treat ourselves like war criminals. And when another person says, oh, this is what I did, all we do is give them compassion, love, kindness. It's like, it's time now for us to feel compassion for ourselves truly. And even if we're not feeling it, we've got to show it. It's important to show it. One very, very important part of self-compassion is realizing that nobody's perfect. It's part of our commonality as humans that everybody messes up in different ways. It's not like, oh, she's such an angel. Oh, and that one's such a Rebbitzin, and that one's so perfect. No, everybody has the things that they mess up in. This is what really brings humans together. We are very, very common in our imperfections. I mean, it takes a different picture, each person. But yeah, there's no perfect people out there. I gave this notion up 5 years ago when I was having interesting party guests, and I was really killing myself over the fact that I couldn't be 100% kind to everybody. But this is the life. Somebody or other is going to trigger you. Sometimes there's a few people who are going to trigger you. I was, today, and I'm not mentioning names, I was out at a restaurant. And I just, I needed that hour. I had a tough morning, very, very sad, I had to go visit. I had to pay a visit to somebody, and then I had to pay another visit to somebody else. And it was just not the best morning of my life. And so I decided, let me take a nice walk in the fresh air. And I get to my favorite restaurant, and I'm sitting there. I order my food, and then I'm sitting there when somebody comes over to me, who I know, a blast from the past, an old-time party guest, comes over to my table, and she's like, can I sit down? And I'm like, I just said hello and how are you doing to her in the other room, but she wanted to sit down, and I'm telling you, I was not in the mood. I was not in the mood, and I had her. She sat down, and I'm like, okay, fine, go sit down. and she was just telling me this and that and criticizing me for everything under the sun. And finally, I'm like, I'm just not talking anymore. And then she just ups and she goes, and that's all. And then at first I got a little bit upset myself. And I know it's because it's an old-time pattern that I have, that I get upset at myself and I'm not perfectly nice to everybody. This is an old-time running pattern. And then it occurred to me, hello, Dina, all you really wanted in this afternoon was an hour to yourself. Now this woman, she comes in, she sits down across from you, uninvited, and she thinks that she could just criticize and go on and on and on and preach and lecture and preach and lecture. Of course you don't want her to sit across from you. Of course you don't want her to be in your frame right now, especially when you're trying to relax. So like that helped me to just let go of all the upset feelings I was feeling toward myself, and it helped me to truly feel self-compassion, a real kind of self-compassion in which I was able to enjoy my food. I mean, really enjoy my food. I mean, you've seen me eat those waffles. It can literally take me an hour. I just savor every bite, and the hot chocolate. And if you're wondering what restaurant this is, it's called Very Juice. It's in the heart of Brooklyn on Avenue M. And no, they're not paying me to advertise for them. But yeah, you can also meditate while you eat. You focus on your food. Some people will watch a video and gobble down their food. It's done in 2 minutes. And then there are people who really take the time to enjoy and savor their food. So I start to really just enjoy and savor my food. And I stopped caring. You know, because we're all human. We all have a right to a break during the day, I believe. We all have a right to chill out, you know. We all have a right to not have an unwanted guest at our table. Am I right? It's like, yeah. It's like the message that the takeaway here is give yourself a break. That's just, this is the life. It's like, who in the world told you that you had to be perfect? Now, okay, parents, yeah, teachers. That's usually the guilty crowd there. But just because we were taught these beliefs about being nice to people, and by being mean to ourselves in the process, doesn't mean that that's a true belief. These are false conditions of worth. It's time to let those go, and it's time to show ourselves true compassion, true love. We have got to love ourselves first. That's self-compassion. Without hiding away and crying day and night and day and night and day and night and saying that my life is just so horrible. That's self-pity. Self-compassion helps you to love yourself and give yourself the empathy that you need and that you deserve, and helps you to gradually be able to move on because you feel understood, because you feel heard, you know?
Yeah, and the amazing thing about being mindful throughout your day is you can be meditating while doing the simplest thing like drinking water. Like even drinking water mindfully is showing yourself self-compassion. Like instead of just like slurping down all the water all at once and finishing the bottle in 2 minutes, you can literally just like savor each sip, notice how it tastes, enjoy it, and just enjoy your water, meditate on it.
Yeah, exactly. And be grateful to God for this water and for how this water nourishes every single cell in your body. And nourishes your brain and helps to keep you sharp as a tack. You know, it's extremely, extremely important to be very, very mindful of everything that we do. And yeah, thoughts will try to come up because that's what the mind does. The mind thinks. It thinks, but it doesn't mean that we have to stop with our mindfulness. Mindfulness and thinking with your mind and doing a lot of overthinking are not the same thing. Mindfulness is where I fully throw myself into my life. Overthinking is where I'm getting miserable, and that usually leads to a whole lot of self-pity and then self-criticism. But mindfulness is something else. In mindfulness, you are getting yourself around. You're doing what you have to do. You're doing what you want to do. And you're unlimited. Like we were saying in the last show, you are absolutely unlimited when you are being mindful. There is nothing that you cannot do. So anyways, I am Dina Nierenberg, hostess of Life as I See It, with my favorite co-hostess of all time, my daughter Esther Nierenberg. Thank you so much for being on the show today, honey. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Love you all. Till next time.